And hey, everybody, this is Lorraine Ball,
And Jennifer Denny.
and it's another Friday morning small biz chat.
Awesome. Let's get started.
Absolutely. And this week, we're going to talk about auditing your website.
A very important thing to do because it's your baby, but somebody else is looking at it differently.
And I love the mom metaphor because, my children are beautiful. My children are perfect. Yeah. But the truth is that my website, just like my children, have features I love and features that, little work.
Yeah. And you need to be looking at what, like every 2 years?
At least, my first website that I built for Round Peg, I think I had it like 6 or so years, and that was okay back then.
Hmm.
But the next one I had 2 years, and then a year, and you're kind of on this path because the technology keeps getting so much better.
Technology gets better, design gets different, user expectations get different. And so you need to be looking at, updating and maybe completely throwing out what you have and starting over.
I love working with WordPress because for the most part, you can tweak for quite a while. But then there is a point at which you got to be like, okay, this really needs a major overhaul.
Yeah, I'm a WordPress fan as well, and it's just because so many different people are using it, and so it does constantly kind of keep up with the technology.
But technology and styles do change. And what was cool a year ago may look a little dated now.
Yeah, and you don't want to look dated because if you look dated, then people feel like you're not keeping up with the times.
And I am always amazed by people who want to position themselves as leading edge. And if that's in your brand position, we are a leading edge consulting firm. Really? With a website that was designed in 2007? No.
See, that what they're thinking of is that they're leading edge within their industry
Mhm.
and their particular, which, they might be, but you're not portraying that by not having leading edge technology on your website as well.
Absolutely. And so I really encourage, like you said, every 18 months to 2 years, I think you should do an audit of your website.
So why don't you break down like what you would audit within a website?
So the first thing that I look at is the design, just the visual impact. And I encourage people, go take a look at your competitor sites and then look at yours. These days, these days almost everybody's gotten to some kind of mobile responsive. If your website, audit point number one, if your website does not look spectacular on a phone and on a tablet, you're in serious trouble. But let's assume it, I almost feel silly saying it until I land on a website that isn't, and I'm like, okay, we need to talk. But then you want to look at how are you laying out the site? How are you uh, right now? The popular thing is sort of asymmetrical design, and that's very cool and trendy now. 2 years from now, that may have gone the way of the go-go boot. It was cool at the time and it looks pretty dated now. But right now, designs that are a little bit off, they're not as chunky.
Mhm.
2 and 3 years ago, everything was very chunky and very blocky. And now designs are a little more asymmetrical, lots of white space. We can use so many different fonts now. It doesn't have to be the same half dozen web safe fonts.
And what does design affect on a website? Like, why should they be concerned about it?
Well, part of it is the user experience. How are you leading people through your website to get them to that point that they say, "Oh, I want to do business with you?" Part of the design is navigation.
Yep.
When somebody comes to your website, what are the 5 choices that they have at the top of the page? Not 50, You know, yeah, those drop down menus that have menus and sub menus or the giant menu.
That's gone.
Well, it should be, but I hit another website recently and the client's like, oh, we want that. And I went, why?
Analysis by paralysis is what people need to hear. If you give people all these choices of where they can go, then they get confused. Like, lead them down the path that they need to go.
Well, and the other thing, and this is something that has changed in the last 10 years, we have a generation of people that have grown up with something called Google. Those people are now in positions of authority and they know how to use something called a search function. So they come to your website and they ignore your navigation, they ignore your buttons, and they go right to that search bar and they type in what they're looking for.
Yep. Yep. People know what they want. So, don't try to, force them into finding what they want. They know.
Absolutely. But your job, and this is part of the design, is no matter where they go on the site, no matter what page they land on, at the bottom of that page, there should always be a logical next step.
Yeah.
Okay, I loved this. Now what? And that's your opportunity to get them into your sales funnel. Let them come in any way they want, but then you push them into your funnel. So design is the first thing that I look at.
Yep. And Google cares about all this stuff too. I have to mention, from an SEO perspective, the longer that you can keep somebody on your website, the longer you can keep them on a page and more involved, it signals to Google that people like what you are giving. So
they're
yeah.
going to send more people there because they know you're. It's like being any business. If you're a restaurant and you take care of customers and the hotel next door can forward people to you or to some other restaurant, they're going to send them there because they know you're going to take care of them.
Bingo.
Google's a concierge. Just think of Google as your business concierge.
Yeah. So what's the next thing you look at?
The next thing I look at is the content. It's great to have a logical design. It's great to have all the pages mapped out correctly. But if there isn't anything of interest on the pages, if you don't have answers to the questions that people have when they come to your website, they're not going to stay.
Yep. And you've got to build that out step by step. Well, if they ask this, they're probably thinking this next. And if they think about this, what's the intention? And that's how the search engines work too these days. They're looking for the intention.
And it was something else that I think is more of a style thing, but I think is really important on content, is knowing who you're talking to. And too often you get to these websites, and lawyers out there, I'm talking to you. Engineers, accountants, it's all about, we do this. We've got all these certificates. We're really smart. Don't you want to do business with us? No. Because it's all about you.
Yeah.
What I recommend is a really simple exercise. Go ahead and print out your homepage and your about page. Print it out, hard copy. Now sit down with two pens, a red and a blue. Every time you use first person, we, us, even our clients, our is first person, circle it in red.
Yeah.
Every time you use words that are second person, you, your, companies like you, people like you, circle in blue. The ratio should be 2-to-1, blue to red.
Yeah.
If it's not, you may want to try either a rewrite, hire somebody to do it, or a couple of weeks ago, we had you talked about a tool.
AnyWord.
You may want a subscription to AnyWord and have the artificial intelligence personalize your copy.
Yeah, it goes back to just, like you just said, Google. People they want to find information themselves, and so if you are making it all about you got to make it about them, because that's how today's consumer is.
Absolutely. You want to make it about their problems, and once you prove that you can handle my problem, then you have earned the right to talk about you.
Because that's the very last stage of the buying cycle.
Mhm.
Now
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, yeah. The first stage of the buying cycle is not about you. It is about your customers. And unless you're a celebrity, you're Puff Daddy or you're Beyonce, and somebody's coming to your website, that's okay. If you're Beyonce, you can talk about you because that's what people have come for.
Correct, correct.
I don't know about you, but I ain't Beyonce.
Nope, nope, nope.
No, like your music, but yeah, no.
Working. What's your
Uh,
next one that you look for?
so the next thing I look at is conversion, because the whole point of having a website is to bring random strangers into your business and encourage them to share a little information, their email, their phone number, so that you can begin a longer conversation. Go ahead, because I know conversion's your happy place
Yeah,
too.
I'm just like maybe define conversion because I think sometimes people hear the word conversion and they're like, well, what does that mean?
Conversion simply means getting someone to take action. So if they come to your website and you have a contact form and they fill it out, that's conversion. You have an audit, a self audit form where they go through and check off stuff. That's conversion.
Yep,
You offer a download. Here, get our free guide to retail listings in your area. That's conversion.
yep.
So any of those actions that encourage someone to put their hand up and say, "Hey, I'm over here and I kind of might want to talk to you," that's conversion.
You're trying to get them to that next step at
Mhm,
the final stage. Your
mhm,
content did the job of getting them interested. Now, like you might have that download, like you're talking about, like that's a higher up conversion versus filling out the form. Like
mhm,
that's a big ask.
mhm.
And if you're going immediately only for that, then that's where you're probably going to fail.
And think about it as you're walking through a grocery store or any kind of store. If there are items along the shelf that are $5,000, you're going to think once or twice about buying it if that's the first thing I offer you. But
Hmm.
if I offer you a free sample, or here for $50 or for $10 or for a buck 50, you can try this item. Those little asks. Now I'm like, "Oh, that was good. I'll go back for more."
Yeah.
That's where those downloads, resource kits, tools become really important because they give people that little taste of what you're offering, and
Get used
they
to your brand, get used to who you are, then you can ask for the big ask. Like
absolutely,
moving the cheese across.
absolutely. But you've got to have conversion points everywhere. There
Hmm.
needs to be that not obnoxious, buy this, check this, but I should never leave a page without knowing what my next step is.
What's the call to action? What do you want them to do?
Mhm. And it's one, one call
One.
to action per page. Not, okay, well, here's this. And if that's not what you want, then you can have this. No, here's this. Oh, you didn't want it? Well, here's more information. Do you want it now?
We're not traveling salesmen, okay?
Awesome. And then the last thing we audit, and I'm actually going to turn this around to you because this is really your happy place. The fourth part of our audit is always SEO.
Yeah, yeah. SEO, you gotta, this is sometimes design and SEO fight. Because what you might need for a design aspect needs to marry SEO. And it's got to be almost at the same time because otherwise you might come up with a design that doesn't keep SEO. You've got this pretty website that's going to be hidden behind a door because nobody's ever going to find it.
Mhm.
And so you have to marry the two. And I think sometimes SEO can make things look ugly. So you gotta use both brains.
So, one of the things that I really enjoyed doing was on the Round Peg Web redesign on our service pages. I had these really long descriptions because that's our cornerstone content.
Hmm.
And the designer's like, "It's ugly. You can't do this." And I'm like, "Well, then make it not ugly." And we came up with a really great compromise because the vast majority of human beings are only going to read about a third of the way down. So we designed the top really beautifully. We put a nice call to action, which visually signaled, oh, this is the end of the page.
Yep.
And then underneath that, we still had a pretty layout, but we have a ton of content. So if somebody wants to, they can keep going.
Yep.
But we visually broke it. So for the normal human being, that was what they needed.
If you look at your content kind of like an E, that's what people do is they scan the very top of each individual. So you got to break it out
Mm-hmm.
and then have some visuals in between, then you're serving both parts.
Absolutely. So, if you want to know more about auditing websites, we're actually going to have a link in the chat to our web audit tool and our next session of our longer web audit class. And if you're looking for a really deep dive on your SEO, Jennifer, we'll put a link to Elevated Marketing Solutions because I think these people need to talk to you.
We can handle that.
I figured you can. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next Friday.
Take care.
Bye. Oops. Oh, okay, cool.